Hey everyone, welcome to episode 18 of You Cannot Rewatch, the Evangelion Rewatch podcast. I'm still David.
I'm also still Dylan.
And this week, talking about episode 18, as we said. So, make sure you've... do I need to keep saying make sure you've... I don't think I need to keep saying make sure you refresh your knowledge. You get it at this point. If you don't get it, what are you doing? Unless this is your first episode that you jumped into, but if you did, I don't know.
You should. On a really weird
if you
place.
jump into episode 18, even if it's your first one, you should expect that you're not going to know everything. So, but So just in case you didn't rewatch it and you're just going on your old knowledge, this is the episode where Toji becomes a pilot for Unit 3, and it all goes wrong.
Very wrong.
Very wrong. So it opens up with Unit 3 going through a lightning cloud, storm cloud, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I had a bitch of a time, or at least I thought I did, finding this episode subbed, because I have all the series dubbed downloaded, but since I'm watching the sub now, I've just been watching them online. I've been watching my legally obtained copies, of course, but
Online.
I kept going to sites and trying to watch the episode, and every time I would watch it, it would start and it would be dubbed. Every single time, it would start in English, and I was getting really pissed because I couldn't find it subbed anywhere. This episode starts out in English.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting.
Yep. So I was just sitting here getting pissed for 20 minutes looking at this fucking episode, and it starts in English, even in the original Japanese. So
that's pretty cool that they stay dedicated to that.
Yeah, what's not cool is the site I was at decided that even though it was in English, they were still going to translate it. So there was already subtitles at the bottom of the screen to translate it for people into English, and then there was more subtitles on top of those to translate it into double English. So it was really confusing, but it was in English, so I didn't actually have to read it. So this is kind of interesting. Obviously, we know later in the episode, Unit 3 becomes an angel. And presumably, you could say one of two things. Either this going through the storm cloud is meant to be symbolic of the storm to come, or going through the storm cloud somehow literally causes it to be infected with an angel.
Right, as if the angel's in the storm cloud.
Yeah. And I don't know which I would go with. I think maybe it could be both. I don't really know. Maybe the angel was already there when it was in America, and that's why they wanted to get rid of it. I don't know. I mean, I guess, I really don't know. They don't really give you any hints. Aside from that storm cloud, I mean, you could say that that's a big hint, but that aside, they don't really give you any good way of knowing exactly how this angel got contaminated
because
into the...
obviously it was able to make itself stay dormant enough to not get picked up, so it could have been all the way in America and you never would know.
Yeah, there's really no way to know. I guess we'll just assume it's the lightning cloud, but again, that could just simply be symbolic of what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So we see Misato. Misato kind of throughout this whole episode is talking about how she's trying to find the right time to tell Shinji that Toji's the pilot, and right at the top of the episode, she's trying to explain it to him, but they get interrupted by Kinsuke, who wants to be a pilot. Then we go to the school. There's some kind of interesting stuff going on at the school. First of all, before we go there, we learned that the only reason Toji agreed to be a pilot in the first place is so that his sister could get transferred to another hospital. But then, we actually go to the school and see them interacting. We see Toji is not too excited about what's going on. And actually, everybody's tension seems really high. Maybe not Shinji's, but even when Asuka comes, she seems extremely pissed off, and Toji, I guess he doesn't seem pissed off, but he's just kind of he just seems depressed, really. But then Rei goes and talks to him, and I think this is a really interesting scene because even as Toji points out, why are you talking to me? You don't care about other people.
Yeah,
and it is interesting because Rei doesn't go up there with any purpose. She doesn't say, oh, hey, we needed to go do this thing for Nerve. She just straight up goes up there just to talk to Toji. That's really weird for Rei. Rei wouldn't just go talk to somebody. Right. Just hey, what's up? Rei doesn't do that. So this is really weird.
It's really interesting, she even realizes it herself when Cersei points out. She's like, oh yeah, I wouldn't do this. Almost to herself, yeah, why did I do this? I don't even know why.
I don't even remember walking up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting. And I don't know if I really know why Rei would do that. I don't have an idea about why her character would do that. But Toji also points out, you obviously really care about Shinji as well, and that's when she realizes, oh yeah, I guess I do. Yeah. So Rei's not great at knowing about herself, but she's great about learning about herself from other people, apparently. Then again, I kind of pointed this out last week, but these episodes kind of make it seem like some of these ancillary characters are going to be more major, and obviously we're learning more about Toji, but we see a lot more of Hikari, the class rep. She walks home with Asuka. She's in this episode a lot more actually, but
Yeah,
she walks home with Asuka, and they talk. This isn't actually. Hang on, am I getting these mixed up? I don't know. Well, maybe this is later in the episode. I can't remember. But she walks home with Asuka, and they talk about at some point in the episode, if it's not now, when they walk home the first time, they talk about how Hikari likes Toji, and Asuka basically insults everybody else in the conversation. And I thought it was interesting that the only way, because Asuka kind of is like reassuring to Hikari, like, oh, there's no way Rei likes Toji, like he's all yours. But the only way that Asuka can be nice to people is if she's putting other people down.
Yeah.
Like she's like, oh sure, I'll tell you something nice, but only because Rei's a bitch.
But yeah.
So
don't worry, she's retarded. Pretty much what she's saying.
Yeah, that's Asuka's logic. But anyway, so then we see Asuka and Shinji in the apartment, and they start to talk about Unit 3, and Asuka's like surprised Shinji doesn't know who the pilot is. And this is interesting too, I think, because Asuka doesn't seem to care about other people's feelings, but clearly like she cares enough to not tell him about Unit 3, or maybe she just doesn't know how to tell him, because I would imagine Asuka wouldn't care about blurting that out because this conversation comes up, and Asuka says like, oh, you don't know? And then she's just like, wait, who is it? And Asuka's like, oh, I don't know. So
it's like she was going to tell him, and then immediately saw a look on his face and just like, never mind.
Yeah, I think this is one of the rare times at this point in the show where we see like Asuka, like she actually kind of cares about other people and doesn't want to have people get hurt, really, or at least not as much as she lets on. So then Kaji comes in. Kaji's staying with him because Misato is off preparing to test Unit 3's activation. And I don't know, Kaji just says, let's all go to bed, I guess. Whatever. And then Shinji and Kaji are talking as they're going to sleep. And Kaji gives Shinji some wisdom, saying people can't understand others completely. It's impossible for people to understand ourselves, let alone each other. So yeah, that's, interesting. Mull that over, everybody. Then I guess, do we want to go and jump into the Unit 3 test stuff, or is there anything else we want to talk about for the first half of the episode?
I just had like one comment I meant to make last week, but it happened again this week, so it worked out. I like how they continue to have the teacher explain the second impact in just the background.
I was almost going to bring that up too. Like every single time you hear the teacher talking, it's about second impact.
Second impact, yeah.
I guess they talk about it a lot, which is interesting considering everything they teach about it is a lie. So
yeah.
But yeah, so then we go to the Unit 3 activation test, which doesn't go as planned, and we find out, of course, Unit 3 has been contaminated by an angel. And one thing I've always thought is interesting from a director standpoint is the last time we see Toji is way back at the school.
I had that exact same thought too when I noticed this.
Yeah, I've always thought that was weird. Like, there's never a cut to Toji inside of the thing. We don't even see him arriving at the activation facility. We don't see him getting in the Ava, and we certainly don't see him once he's in it and it gets contaminated. And I always thought that was very interesting.
I can't tell because the way they act it too. They never say it's him. They keep being like, "Well, where's Toji?" It's like, you can't possibly think we're that dense that we don't realize it's Toji by now. So that surely can't be still trying to be a secret till the very end.
Yeah, I don't think it's meant to be a secret to the audience at this point. I think it's just meant to be a secret to those characters talking about it.
And that's why I'm wondering if it's choosing to take this episode from the point of view of Shinji, who never actually knows it's him till he sees him.
Yeah, I think it is for the most part. But I mean, there's certain stuff in there just for the audience that isn't for Shinji, like the other characters kind of talking about it and like being nervous about it. And even like, this is way late, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but like the scene of Hikari cooking for Toji the next day.
Yeah.
That's just for the audience. That's not from Shinji's perspective. Yeah, so the Ava's launched to combat the now dubbed 13th Angel, which is the one they talked about in the previous episode, the one that would be the predicted 13th Angel. I don't know if this is what they meant by predicted, because I think I actually mentioned last week one of the reasons Gendo is such a cool character is like no matter what happens, or it's hard to tell what his plan is because even when things go wrong, he seems very calm and collected. But I forgot in this episode, he actually seems kind of like on the edge a little bit. He seems pretty tense, and he gets angry at some points. This is, I think, one of the, if not the only time that it seems like things are not going according to Gendo's plan, and he's a little nervous about making the calls to end this.
I think he's a little bit nervous about the calls too, and then also it's kind of hard to. He realized he's making some pretty tough calls in front of his crew.
Yeah,
which is going to make his crew really start questioning his method. I would assume.
That's true. That's definitely true. Yeah, maybe he was just nervous about not actually having to do the dummy plug, but the reaction from other people about having to
even
do
before too. Like, I mean, you could definitely say Akari comes out of this looking like a dick. But the very first thing he does before they try anything is, like, eject the entry plug.
Yeah.
Like, so right off the bat, he immediately tries to save the pilot. And then, like, once he's like, well, the angel's not letting us take it, there's nothing else we can do.
Yeah, I think it's easy to look at Gendo as a villain in this episode. But from a certain perspective, in this episode, I think if you look at him as a whole picture, he's definitely a villain. But in this episode, if you actually kind of think about it, he kind of had to make the calls he did.
Yeah, definitely.
At this point, Unit 1 is the last line of defense for this angel. The absolute last. Nothing else that they can throw at it will scratch it. If Unit 1 can't kill it, nothing can. And if Shinji won't kill it, then we're all doomed.
Exactly.
So, I mean, Gendo literally had no choice but to make that decision.
And he gave Shinji the full option to make this whole decision on his own, and he didn't do it.
Yeah,
so.
And I think that's why ultimately, like, even though the Nerve staff are obviously horrified by what goes down, we'll talk about that in a sec, but I think that's why ultimately they don't like all leave or anything or like have a mutiny because they, even though it's horrific, I think that they can understand as adults. They can understand why the decision needed to be made.
Right. Although the creepy smile when Gendo watches the
yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Things.
Like, I think you can look at this and say, oh, you know, Gendo had to make that call, and sure he did, but that doesn't mean Gendo didn't enjoy it a little too much.
Oh yeah, he enjoyed it a little bit too much.
Yeah. But I imagine that was a little bit less about, like, I'm getting off to murder and a little bit more of, like, hey, the dummy plug worked. I'm a genius.
Yeah.
I can do it. But anyways, so yeah, but back to what we were saying, like, I do think that this was something that wasn't planned. And it's that rare time when we see something that even Gendo is actually affected by.
Yeah.
But I wonder if this, maybe it was planned by, or maybe Sele knew about this or something, or maybe even Gendo did, and he was only nervous because, again, about the how people would react and how it would affect Shinji. But if this wasn't the way it was going to go down in the Dead Sea Scrolls, then what was the prediction for the 13th Angel? I don't know.
Yeah, that's another reason why I think that, of course, like we said last episode, we'll never see him. But that would be one thing to be really cool to, like, figure that out.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, even if we did see the Dead Sea Scrolls, they would be so fucking cryptic.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
like,
for sure.
It'd be so hard to figure out what they meant. It probably would give us more questions than anything.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, it'd still be cool to see, obviously. So we see back to the top of the battle. Shinji sees the Eva and realizes, this is Unit 3. Something's wrong here. There must be a pilot still inside. And Asuka tries to actually tell him now, like, who the pilot is, because now at this point, like, there's no reason to mince words, but she gets attacked, and so she doesn't get to tell him in time. And then Rei is ordered to attack, and this is another super interesting thing from Rei. She hesitates and doesn't fire. And I had forgotten about this, actually. I think, again, earlier in the episode it was pointed out that she cared about Shinji. And if you would have had a scene where she needed to attack Shinji but hesitated, I think, okay, I could understand that. But hesitating with Toji is really interesting.
It is, yeah.
It almost makes me wonder if maybe, earlier when Hikari said, I think Rei likes him or whatever, and Asuka was like, no way. Maybe she does a little bit. Or maybe not like him in that way, but, like, there's something there.
Yeah. I can see that because maybe she does have sort of connection with him, and maybe he kind of got her when they were talking on the roof, and she kind of remembered that. But also, she doesn't really say, like, oh, Toji's in there. She just kind of says, but there's a pilot in there.
That's true. That's a good point.
So it's almost like she's just kind of like, you can see her becoming more and more humanized, where she, like, actually feels sympathetic towards
that could be.
Now.
Maybe just by being around Shinji more and seeing his personality, like, through that osmosis, she has kind of absorbed the compassion and, like,
right
of a general person. That's possible, yeah. Or maybe even similar to that, but like, she's thinking about what would Shinji do in this situation, like. um, but yeah, she hesitates. So she gets attacked too, and the angel actually tries to contaminate her Ava as well.
Yeah.
And this is interesting because it makes me wonder if that hadn't been stopped, how far would that have gone? Like, would we have two angels? If
I was wondering that too. Yeah.
and of course, in some upcoming episodes we see more contamination similar to that, but we also don't really see it like go all the way. It'd be interesting to see like what if it contaminated an entire another Ava. I also think it's interesting that, and maybe it has to do with Rei herself, like because it's Rei, it's easier to contaminate her mind, but it didn't try to contaminate Unit 2 with Asuka.
That's true.
And it had more of an easy mark for that, I would think, but...
Yeah. Because, I mean, it was the
first one it attacked.
It said she was... Well, I guess she ejected right away, and...
That's true. Yeah, maybe that's why she ejected, I don't know.
Yeah, because I heard some theories that speculates that maybe this angel has to have the entry plug contaminated to actually be able to fully use.
Yeah, that makes sense. I forgot she ejected, so yeah, that's probably it. Yeah. So they severed the left arm of Unit 0, which this is something you just kind of have to pick up on in the show. If you're rewatching it, I'm sure you're well aware of this. I hope so, but they never really explained that when a pilot is piloting an Ava, they're completely connected to its nerves, and like they feel the pain that it feels. Because even way back in the first episode, when Unit 1 is being attacked by the third angel, and it grabs its arm and like is breaking it, we see Shinji like freaking out, and I remember watching that for the first time, being like, Shinji, are you fucking stupid? Like, that's your robot getting attacked, not you. Because they don't explain in that episode that they're feeling the pain.
Yeah, exactly.
They have the nerve connection of the Ava. So I think that's something you just kind of have to pick up on, because otherwise characters seem really stupid. Like, why would Rei be upset that her robot's arm got cut off? It's not her real arm. But to her, like, she felt the pain of losing her arm.
Yeah.
Which is fucking...
Which
would suck. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that'd be trippy as hell, too.
Yeah, because, I mean, first of all, you're a 14-year-old kid, and then you have to feel like your arm or something get ripped off. I mean, that's just nuts.
Yeah, definitely. And also, like... And this is something I've always... I think this is true, but I guess I've never actually read this, I don't think. I've always just kind of thought this. But I believe the more an Ava pilot is synced up with its Ava, the more, like, they are, like, one being and not two separate beings. Like, it's no longer a pilot piloting. It's actually, like, one synchronized thing. And that's why, like, in a couple episodes we see Shinji actually absorbed into an Ava, because he gets so synchronized with it that he becomes it.
Yeah.
But so I think the more synchronized they are, the more they feel the pain of the Ava. And that's why I think maybe it's purely a visual thing. But, like, for example, when Shinji gets choked in this episode, we actually see choke marks on his neck.
Yeah.
I've always, the first time I watched it, I always thought that's really weird to put in as a visual thing. But I believe that's because they're actually synchronized up with the Ava so much that they're not just feeling the physical pain. If they're synchronized to a certain extent, they're actually getting dealt the physical pain as well.
Yeah. So that,
which could be wrong, but
yeah, I mean, if that's correct though too, I'm kind of curious. Like, would that mean Shinji's arm would fall off if they ejected his arm?
I think so. Yeah, because I think Rei, though she is a great pilot and can synchronize with any Ava, because of her kind of blank slate, she's not able to like synchronize to the levels like Shinji and his mom in Unit 1.
Right.
Like they could synchronize to an unbelievable level, and even Asuka could probably do the same. But yeah, Rei can't get to that level, so she probably couldn't. But yeah, I think you definitely could. I believe, if that's right. I might have just completely pulled that out of my ass. So let me know what you guys think. If anybody
that's pretty
listening,
cool. That's pretty intense.
Yeah, either that or there's absolutely no reason other than purely visual to show those like stretch or like attack marks, because they showed that later too, with some other. I remember there's a scene of Rei that has something like that.
Yeah. And kind of on that, like in contrast to like the rebuilds where it's Asuka, and this instead of Toji.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually get, interestingly enough, you can actually get to see the contamination, which I think is kind of cool. I think it almost makes it more effective if you see the contamination, I guess, in a way. But is hers because she sinks too deep? Because that's what it kind of makes it look like.
I don't know. I don't want to get too much into that because that's not the episode. That's the rebuild. But yeah, maybe. I mean, there's still a lot of questions about exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And how deep the contamination went.
'Cause that's what makes you always kind of wonder. Is like you always want these perfect sync levels, but they also kind of make it sound like getting too synced is almost too dangerous.
Yeah, well, because again, that's what is going to happen in a couple episodes. I don't want to talk about that too much yet because we need to talk about it in a couple episodes. But in episode 19, when Shinji is fighting that angel and like he actually is absorbed into it, they don't actually say much about it in that episode until the next episode when he's been absorbed. But in the Rebuild movie, during that same scene, they actually are like yelling at Shinji or like yelling at their computer screens like, if he goes any deeper, we'll lose him forever.
Yeah.
So like that is a concern that they obviously know about. Like if you go past a certain synchronization level, you will actually like physically synchronize into the Ava.
He'll realize that he's been in the Matrix the whole time, and he'll wake up.
Right.
Like, oh, shit, we lost him.
But I mean, well, that's what happened to Yui, right? I think.
I'm not entirely sure. I'm like still iffy on what happened with Yui.
I think it's something similar. It's not the exact same thing, but I mean, she was absorbed into the Ava somehow.
Yeah.
So
I think it just kind of depends on like which one you're watching and stuff too.
That's true.
Because I've only seen this series once, so I'm kind of a little hazy on what happens with her in this series.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're gonna actually get to the Nerve flashback episode soon, so we'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
But anyways, back on this episode. So yeah. So Shinji's getting choked. He's getting attacked by Unit 3 or the Angel, and he refuses to fight because he knows there's a person inside. He's still not aware it's Toji, but he knows somebody's in there. And Gendo's response is, you got to fight or you're gonna die, and he's right. But Shinji says he would rather die than kill someone else. So Gendo activates the dummy system, which we've been hearing so much about the last few episodes, and things get pretty fucking brutal.
Really brutal.
Related to this scene, kind of, but also somewhat of a side note. The visuals in this episode are fucking awesome. Mm-hmm. Like the shots they have and the cuts to those shots are really fucking good throughout the whole episode, and they kind of like really go up to 11 during this scene.
Oh yeah.
One of the things go ahead.
I really love the reveal of the Angel being an Ava unit.
Yeah.
It just like comes around that mountainside into the back, and just all the reactions of being like, "Wait, are you sure that's the Angel? Because that looks like an Ava unit."
Yeah, it's great, and the silhouette against the sun the sitting sun is great, and then even during like the actual like scene where Unit 1 is ripping it apart, all the little cuts to like you'll cut to like just a shot of a street just covered in blood, a shot of a lamppost like dripping, or a traffic light dripping with blood. Like those shots are really cool.
Literally a river of blood.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
But I always, Evangelion is really, depending on I guess what your tastes are, either horrific or awesome with how crazy the violence is. I love the hyper violence of scenes like this. I think it just like from a visual standpoint, it just represents what's going on so much more effectively than if they were to pull punches on a scene like this.
Yeah.
I think get as fucking violent as you want because it's brutal, it just increases the, I don't know what the fucking words I'm looking for are. It makes it more effective. It wouldn't be as effective if he just like punched him. And because I mean even so, like once the dummy plug is activated, he takes out Unit 3 almost immediately. He kind of I guess you would say snaps the neck or he disables it immediately. The fight's over. But he doesn't stop. Or I want to say the dummy plug system, it doesn't stop. It continues to go until the actual pilot is attacked.
I mean, that scene when it just pulverizes its head, just like explodes.
Yeah, I've always
intense.
One of my favorite things in Evangelion ever, and they do this in the Rebuild as well, is that punch into a head and just it fucking explodes, and like you just see for like the split second like an eye fly away, and like it's.
Oh, I watched it like frame by frame slowly. It's intense. Like you see the bottom jaw and like teeth come flying out.
Yeah,
and,
it's
like,
animated exceptionally.
Oh my god, yeah, it's really
gruesomely detailed, but like really well animated. Stuff like that is fucking insane.
That's really good.
But yeah, that's a great cut. Or a fucking disgusting cut, depending on your taste.
Yeah.
So where was I going to go after that? Okay, so we see it pick up the entry plug and crush it in its hands, and we cut to, like I mentioned earlier, Hikari cooking, talking about what she's going to make for Toji, which is just a scene thrown in there to kind of like give you a punch to the gut of like, oh, Toji just fucking died, and then we come back in a couple minutes and reveal Toji didn't die. Which I'm gonna talk about more in just a second. But first, before we see that, we learn that Misato and Ritsuko are still alive, and okay, Misato's kind of injured, but she's fine. Ritsuko's perfectly fine, and Kaji's talking to Misato, and Misato's like, she kind of asks about what happens, and then she realizes like she needs to call Shinji and tell him, and so we see she calls him and is trying to find the words to tell him, but as she's trying to find the words, Shinji looks out and sees them lifting Toji out because they say, we've got life confirmed, like he's still alive, and they pull him out of the entry plug, and he's all fucked up looking. And Shinji screams. Episode ends. So I have never liked that Toji lives.
I don't either.
I
actually forgot he lived.
I think this episode's great. It's really good. I don't think it makes sense for Toji to live. Now, anybody listening, this is going to be a spoiler for the manga, but people probably know it. If you're listening, I'm sure you know it. Toji dies in the manga in this scene.
Oh, really? That's
yeah.
Cool.
And I think that works better. I just think, again, we were talking about how with like the violence and stuff, it just doesn't pull punches. It just goes all the way. Right. And it almost feels like right at the end here, we pull the punch.
Well, you can't have something so impactful because the whole reason what happens in that scene is like brutal is because you're like, dude, like he doesn't know that Toji's in there. He's basically like murdering Toji.
Yeah.
And then if you find out that Toji lives, and it's like it's fine. It's just like, well, then there's literally
well,
no
he's
consequence.
not fine, but he does.
Well, right.
Yeah.
There's just no consequence for the actions really that happen.
Yeah, it takes some of the impact away, and I think on a rewatch of the episode, the violence is still awesome, but it makes it a little less effective when you know that Toji eventually lives through it. You do have to keep in mind that we were talking about how pilots are connected to their nerves. I don't know if Toji would have stayed conscious through that whole thing, but he would have experienced getting ripped apart.
Well, that's one thing I was kind of wondering too, because I was wondering how much, if the angel basically kind of almost like affects him in a way just so he can use the angel itself, or if it acts as a dummy plug. Because if the dummy plug's in fact, you don't feel the pain anymore, do you?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess he probably wouldn't. Because, I don't know. But, I mean, this isn't exactly like a dummy plug.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it doesn't really tell us how it exactly takes effect over the angel.
That's true. But I like to believe that he felt all the pain because it makes it more effective.
He could have brutally felt everything that just happened.
Yeah.
Because he said he was conscious the whole time.
Yeah, I think they do say that.
They mentioned that his vitals are fine and he's like conscious and all that stuff like that. So.
But yeah, I don't know. From a writing perspective, like, go all the way with something like, I don't like in shows, and this is almost a trope in anime, like characters not dying.
Yeah.
That shit pisses me off. Like, commit. Make a commitment. It's more effective from a story perspective. I understand it makes it maybe harder to write later because you don't have this great resource of a character to use. But in this case, we don't ever fucking use Toji again. We barely even mention him after this episode. But his what happened with him is still affecting the characters greatly. So make it affect him even more greatly and have him die. Like that just makes Shinji's like rage in the next episode even more understandable.
It's just like, and I don't mean to sound like real, I don't know, I guess bleak or whatever about it. And the same with you. It's just like, if you're gonna do something, like you said, if you're gonna do something, commit to it. Like, nothing makes something more impactful or more emotional than having the thing actually happen. Like, don't be like, oh man, they're gonna die, because nothing makes something worse when you like watch something, you're like, oh, they're not actually gonna kill this character. So what they just did is essentially pointless because I know they're not gonna kill this main character.
That's why I don't give a shit about any superhero movie, because there's no fucking like thing that's gonna happen, and it's just kind of boring after a while. And again, this is a great episode of Evangelion, but it does that, you know?
Exactly. I was gonna go off on a tangent on that, but we'll stick with Evangelion.
No, go ahead. Let's do it. Fuck it.
But it's just like with the superhero thing, with that guy in like Avengers or whatever dies, and then they bring him back on a TV show and made all that happen in that entire show or movie mean nothing.
Oh, the Shield guy. Yeah. I had to think about what you meant. I haven't seen the Avengers, so
I thought that. I mean, I don't care about those movies in general, but I was just like, that is I don't know, shit like that pisses me off.
Yeah. It's
like because they literally brought him back just to make more money.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just to make more money, and it also, like, again, it makes it easier, I think, from a writing perspective to bring characters back, because then you don't have to be inventive with your writing.
Or you can get really creative and bring back a twin brother that's exact same character, but different.
You could
that's
do
my
that
favorite.
too.
That's my favorite trope.
But yeah, it's just interesting because Evangelion is so good about breaking through cliches and tropes, and this is like a very rare situation where we don't really see it break free of that exactly.
Right.
I mean, it kind of does in a way because Toji doesn't come back to be an important character later, and I believe I've read this. They never say this in the show, but I've read that like Toji is like at least partially paralyzed after this event, like at least from
like
the waist
lost
down.
his legs or something like that.
Yeah, lost his legs or they're just paralyzed or something like that. But again, that's not stated in the show, at least not in any way that I remember, and I've seen it several times. Maybe there's like a piece of paper somewhere that says it, but I mean, it's just I don't know. I'm not gonna. We're complaining about it a lot. This episode's still really, really good. I love this. It's one of my favorite episodes of the show. I remember the first time watching this show thinking, I don't know how they're ever going to top this episode. Like, this episode's fucking great. And then I watched the next episode. I was like, oh, that's how. Yeah, this episode.
I think this is just, it's like the episode where you're like, oh, shit, like, this show gets real.
Yeah, because I think 16 kind of started that trend a little bit with, like, bursting out of the spherical angel and stuff. But even so, that wasn't, even though that was kind of, like, deep and there was some philosophical stuff in that episode, it didn't hit the characters as hard. And this is one where we're like, hey, shit's hitting the fan for these characters. Like, no more, like, we're just going to school and having fun. Like, Toji's fucked up. Shinji's fucked up because of it. Rei has changed. Asuka has changed. Like, things are different now. And it just kind of, it starts to set up the tone for the next, the last act of the series here.
Yeah.
So, we're not saying this wasn't a great episode. It's fucking fantastic. And again, visually incredible. Yeah. One of the best directed episodes of the whole show. But it's just that little end note that I wish was a little changed.
It's you didn't pull punches. Why did you do it at the end then? Like, is that the moment you do it?
Yeah. And I could understand, I guess, if they had like a grand plan for Toji, but they don't. And since there's nothing ever done with Toji again, it makes more sense to just get rid of him.
Exactly.
It makes it more effective to the characters, to the story, to the motivations of like Gendo. It makes him darker because he actually was responsible for Toji's death.
Yeah. Makes him darker, makes Shinji's hate, more justified.
Yeah. You know? And it also, Rei as well, because Rei had hesitated and didn't want Toji dead.
Exactly.
And since Rei eventually decides to side with Shinji, it makes that it gives that more of a motivation. So just from every perspective of writing and storyline, it makes more sense to get rid of him. And so that was actually one thing that I thought the manga actually did.
That's why I'm trying to find the manga, but I cannot find that thing anywhere.
I said manga because I'm from Kansas. Sorry, guys. Manga. Oh, really? I actually found it pretty easy. I'll try to send you a link if I can find it again.
Every time I find one, it just says like copyright thing.
Although we kind of talked about this off the podcast last time. I meant to talk about it on last week's podcast, but somebody had messaged me and said that we should maybe give the manga another chance, or I should because I had read it. You hadn't read it yet, but I was considering. Let me know, anybody listening, if you would be interested in this. I was thinking maybe me and Dylan, after we watched the show, would read the manga and just kind of have one podcast where we just talk about it and its differences from the show. It'd just be like a normal length episode, but it would just be its own episode. But it'd still be 30, 40 minutes probably. Just however long it would take us to go through and just discuss where the differences lie. Because we wouldn't need to do a whole rewatch or reread of that, because mostly it's the same. But we could just discuss the little differences and kind of the ending of the manga, which has some stuff in it. So if you guys would like to have us do that, let us know. We're probably gonna do it anyways, but
just tell us anyways.
It would encourage us to do it, and we would definitely do it if we got some feedback saying that would be wanted. Yeah, anything else to say about this episode?
Let's see. Not particularly this episode, really. I do like how this is something that you obviously know by now. I do love how they always change the ending theme song to fit the mood of the thing. It's the same song.
Oh yeah, it's always Fly Me to the Moon. Yeah, and it's funny version. Because I'm not the person that watches end credit sequences in shows ever. I don't care. Unless I'm watching on like Netflix and it's just like on autoplay, and then I'll just sit there and let it run out. But usually, like, especially if I'm on the computer watching stuff, when something's over, I just close it. So I watched the show like multiple times and never knew that it did that.
Oh, really?
Like I had heard, maybe once or twice, and I always thought, oh yeah, that's Fly Me to the Moon, whatever. But I didn't realize that every episode had its own theme because I'd never listened to every episode's theme. And I'm actually still not really doing that because I don't want to sit there the whole time and listen to it. But I do at least like kind
I
of.
usually listen to like just the original.
Yeah,
like,
I
the
usually
beginning
check out the first 10 seconds. I'm like, oh yeah, this one's different. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah,
But yeah, it's funny.
I think it's cool because like, go ahead.
I was just gonna say they recorded like so many fucking different versions of that
Yeah.
song for the show because those aren't all different covers, or they are, but those aren't all different covers that existed. Those are all different covers they specifically recorded just for this show.
Yeah, like a Ray does. The Ray's voice actor does a lot of them.
Yeah, because I remember I actually realized that was a thing when I downloaded the Evangelion soundtrack, and half of it was "Fly Me to the Moon" covers.
Yeah,
and it was like, oh shit, this is a thing.
It's kind of cool because I feel like anime's changing their end songs or whatever. Like every 4 episodes is like a really common theme.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool instead of doing that, they just do a different cover to reflect whatever the mood was of that episode.
Yeah.
I think it's really neat.
Yeah, I like that too because I'm not a huge fan of, especially if it's a short show like this. Just keep your opening and closing the same.
You don't need to change it.
But if you want to mix up the song, that's cool. I think that's a unique way to do it. But I don't need like new fucking animation shit done, especially because so many anime are so bad about having spoilers.
God, I hate that so much. Why do you do that?
Yeah, don't do that. Full Metal Alchemist, fuck off.
Yeah.
Yeah, some anime are really bad about that, and you could argue, you know, we actually talked about this like way back in episode 1, but there's actually some stuff that is technically a spoiler in the Evangelion opening, but it's so fucking abstract you have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
Like it's just like bizarre words of like what does that word mean, like Unit 1 test or like AT field, and I guess you could argue like that's a bit of a spoiler, but again, you don't know what it means. So it doesn't really matter. And there's like images of Unit 1 like covered in blood and stuff, but that stuff is done so quickly. It's like rapid fire. It's without any context. It doesn't mean anything.
And like in the beginning when you're watching, you're probably assuming it's like a typical battle mech thing.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Oh, of course it's going to get bloody. Stuff like that. So it's like...
Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't mean anything really. So it's totally fine. It gets a pass. But yeah, in anime openings where they have the hero fighting a villain, and the villain is somebody we haven't seen before, and then 5 episodes after that opening has started, we meet this character, and they're like, maybe it's a good guy. No, it's fucking not, because I've been watching the opening for 5 episodes where the good guy fights this person. Don't fucking try to trick me. I'm not stupid.
Well, the worst part is, too, is like as soon as you actually see that, and it's no longer a spoiler because you know it, they change fucking openings to more spoilers that haven't happened yet.
Yeah, they absolutely do. Yeah, that's the worst. Just keep it the same. Unless your show's like fucking Dragon Ball Z and it's going to last 900 episodes, fucking keep your thing the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a tangent. Anything else? I feel like I was gonna say something. Oh, another small tangent. The only problem I have with Fly Me to the Moon is I can't take it seriously a little bit because there's some movie I can't remember what it is. It's about like a team of like it's like a high school special ed team that goes to compete in building space rockets. And they play "Fly Me to the Moon" in that movie like 2 or 3 times. It's like a Lifetime movie.
Yeah.
That I watched once at an old job I used to have, and yeah, I don't know. It's a little hard to take that song seriously after that because yeah, that may sound bad to make fun of that movie, but trust me, that movie was just really bad. Apparently, it's based on a real story, but the way it was presented in that movie was like really terrible. So. There you go. Thanks. That was Evangelion talk.
Another perfect transition to ending.
Yeah. Someday we might have an episode where it doesn't end awkwardly. I just don't know. How do people end stuff?
Like right now, stop.
Well, not yet, because I gotta say, watch the next episode, and email in if you have anything to say. And thanks for being a fan. Appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around, even though we get off on weird tangents and sound like fucking idiots all the time. But we love you guys.
Now stop.